I know when I was speaking, I actually spoke to Parker yesterday, and there are a lot of different places that you can find freelancing jobs. And like, these are all like places that I'm just finding out about. Right. So definitely like connections. I've heard a lot of people that are in the freelancing space talk about like connections, like people that they've known recommended them to somebody else, and then that person reached out to them, and that's how they got the freelancing job. Of course, a lot of stuff like you can find contracted positions on LinkedIn, Indeed. The freelancing work that I've done so far, I found on Upwork. But then you can also go into like work with consulting firms, right? So I'll have to find it in just a moment. But Parker actually gave me like a list of consulting firms that you can look into and at least get into like their pool of L&D professionals. And then if they find something, if they have a project that fits your experience, then they'll reach out to you. So with that, like they're like assigning you projects, not you having to like go and find and apply to a bunch of different places. So that's all nice.
That's a great way to build your portfolio if you can take even pieces of that, if you're allowed to do so, or you're allowed to unbrand them or use pieces to show. It's a great way to get started if you don't have that yet. Definitely.
Yeah, exactly.
And I love that list, actually.
Yeah. Parker, I was just saying that I was going to share the list of the consulting firms that you gave me when we were speaking yesterday about where to find freelance jobs.
Yeah, there's quite a few. And if you Google them, there's a whole slew of agencies you can check out. So, yeah. How's the microphone? Better?
Perfect.
Much better.
Right. Yes.
So I think the question that you missed was, where was your first freelance position? Where'd you get that?
The first freelance position? Well, that was actually at United Way. There's a local chapter here in the Hartford, Connecticut area. And so I did a workshop for them for a few days. It was fun, and being in front of a group of people, meeting new people. And I thought, oh, this is kind of cool. Maybe I can do more of that. But I found quickly that to find those kind of facilitation jobs, it's, far and few in between, I don't know, I just didn't know if I was going to be able to make a living doing that.
Right.
So this is the interesting thing about the journey of going to freelancing, is that you just don't know really what you want to do until you kind of dive in, do a gig here, a gig there, and you find like, this is my sweet spot. I can actually get more work this way. I think I can have more fun doing this. So in the beginning, it's sort of like a trial and error. So but that was my first gig.
Nice. All right. So what tools do you use regularly in your business, such as project management software, accounting software, proposal templates, contract templates? Like, that's something I'm just figuring out, like with this job that I got yesterday. I'm realizing, okay, well, there isn't a document yet that actually has my rate on paper and the scope of work that I'm supposed to be doing. So I'm going to draft that up and then have them sign that to like kind of CYA. So like, what are some of the tools that you guys use on like the regular?
I'll let you start this time.
Oh, I can start. Hey, all right.
Arthur, I'm sorry.
Well, project management software, I've been exposed to several, including Basecamp, Monday, Trello, only because the clients have different project management software. So I don't have a personal preference per se. Although ID Lance has subscribed to Monday, but we're just kind of trying it for a while to see how that works for us. So we use that. QuickBooks Online It's kind of nice, in terms of accounting software. In the last couple of years, it's been spreadsheets. But this year, because ID Lance is growing, we said, we better go to QBO, get the bookkeeper on, and it's like you can easily make mistakes if you try it. Even if you try the spreadsheet method, you can still make mistakes.
Oh, yes.
So QBO is something that we're using. In terms of proposal or statements of work, one thing I learned early on was really from my clients. So I had one client based here in Connecticut, Lisa, if you happen to know that, small agency, small company. And what they did with me is they had a 1-page statement of work. I loved it. I mean, you're an ID for crying out loud. So you can make a simple, you have to simplify, right, as an ID.
Yeah.
So think of statements of work, proposals as 1-pagers. So I know with ID Lance, our business development manager, I think she's on here, Lainey. So we put together proposals for clients. We try to keep it on 1 page. Maybe it sneaks into the second page, but we look for simplicity. And usually, we give 2 options, 2 pricing options to give the client a little bit of flexibility for their budget. But in terms of the magical proposal out there, you're going to find a million different types. Every client has a different proposal. So, there isn't any magical proposal. You can start with a template if you want. But what I found personally was when I looked at the client's proposal, I still have them. I have the statements of work. I still have the proposal. And you can go back and look through the legal language, and you find that, based on experience, this is nice to have, but you really don't need it. So you can forge your own statement of work or proposal. But a lot of times clients have their own that you have to sign anyway. So anyway,
okay,
that's the bottom line.
We're very close, Parker, truthfully, on that. Really, project management software, what the client wants you to use is what you use. I couldn't commit to any one thing just because I would running multiple projects. I can't do it in a third piece of software, a second piece of software. So I actually did go back to the Excel method for project management, but not for books. As Parker said, like QuickBooks was something I did my second year. And it's just because if you can hook into my bank account and do all that stuff for me, and all I have to do is hit category, and that's going to make my life a lot easier. I have not gotten a bookkeeper yet, Parker. I'm very much a control freak. So QuickBooks was awesome for me from that perspective. The contract, I think we probably had different experiences. I have a 1-page. The statement of work can be a half a page actually in my contract, but I did learn to put some language for myself based on some things that happened as I had different types of clients and things that what you said earlier, Stephanie, the cover my bottom, right? You got to cover yourself. And for more on that, come to next week's talk, and I'll talk a little bit about some of the things that made me update my contract. But I did start with a template, like Parker said, and then what I did was called a lawyer friend of mine and said, "How much will you charge me for reviewing this contract and telling me how to cover my butt?" And I did that, and I paid her full rate. She went over it for me, and then we changed it again a year later. Nice. When something else happened, and we recognized that it was just, a clause here or there, but again, covering yourself so that if you get scope creep, you're paid. Yeah. Most clients will pay you. Most clients are not going to try to do any, more hours, you charge me more, they get it. But some clients will fight you, and the rest of that story next week. Stay tuned.
Yeah. And that's one of the toughest things about freelancing is just make sure that you're covered in case a client turns out to not be the best. So
or like you said, comp time, like in the corporate world, it's we're going to give you 2 days off for that 2 days you spent working. But in your freelance world, who's giving you comp time? I don't know. My boss is a really challenging woman. She doesn't give me a lot of time off.
Yeah, fair. Next question. How do you figure out your rates? I know that's something that I've seen a lot about on
Trial,
Facebook,
error,
on
trial,
LinkedIn.
error. um,
Yeah.
trial and
So
error.
rates is I mean, you'll find a lot of articles out there. People have posted survey results of rates or salaries or whatever income measures you have out there. I just found from my personal experience was I use what I call well, there's three categories I lump the rates into. One is what I call a starter rate. So anywhere from $35 to $45 an hour. So if you're starting out and you're making the leap to freelancing, you have very little to show for a portfolio, but you want to quickly get clients. You have a competitive advantage by showing that you have skills, but you also can offer a lower rate. Clients like that. So if you wanted to quickly build up a portfolio, that's one way to get things going. Is just say, hey, I'm here, I'm $40 an hour. They'll grab you. So then there's a middle rate that I call a growth rate, which is somewhere between $45 to $60 an hour, where you have maybe a couple of years under your belt, and you got a little bit more to show for your work, and you're becoming a little bit more competitive with other IDs out there. And then when you get to the experience rate, the third category is sort of like that 60 to 75 and up kind of rate. A lot of agencies, they typically go with around 65 an hour, sometimes 70 an hour. But as an individual freelancer, you can make whatever you want. I mean, I know people who are charging over $100 an hour. God bless them. I mean, it's harder to get those contracts when you start charging those rates, but you can do it. And then there's this fourth category, which is the fixed project fee kind of, the value-based pricing, where you scope the project and you give one fee, and then you complete it however many hours within that fee. And the upside to that is that your hourly rate might be really high depending on how you price that. The downside is if you're really bad at pricing, you can get a very low rate.
That's true.
Yes.
But anyway, those when I started out about 14 years ago as a freelancer, I was around 45 an hour. I just wanted to get some gigs, and just kind of picked it up from there.
So like, what kind of pricing would you say for like a 1 hour training?
Yeah, so 1 hour training, that is one of those, you take a dart, a dartboard, and you just,
And
fair.
And is it live training? Is it e-learning? What like it depends on what it is, right? And who your audience is.
Yeah,
because you're going to be developing more for some.
All over the map.
All over the place.
So kind of what I do as a rule of thumb is it level 2? A lot of training, that we build in e-learning is around level 2, maybe L1 and L2. But if I wanted to start with a rule of thumb, level 2, 1 hour, 15,000, just rule of thumb. So if you know that it's a little bit less than level 2, less interactions, then you bring the price down a little bit, take a closer look at it. But if you're looking into L3, more simulation-based, scenario-based kind of training, then you bring up that 15,000 up. So you kind of use that as your like starting point, right? And then gauge it from there. So that's kind of how we look at it.
And I would say like for when the numbers Parker's putting out there are very, very, they make a lot of sense for e-learning. Like when he said 15,000 to develop an hour, that is close to a little bit of a higher hourly rate, probably for us, but that's right. That's about the right amount of time and hours. If you're a more, again, I'm going to say seasoned, like a more seasoned, you'll get a higher rate for that. You're going to end up in a lower rate, but the price is in the right place. And that's what you start to learn. When someone comes and says, I have an hour. But here's, Parker, I'd love to hear what you would say about this. Like your client comes to you and says, I have an hour-long training that I want you to put together. But at the end of the day, maybe that training becomes 90 minutes. Or, so when you've contracted to do that, how are you building room for yourself so you're covered in that sense?
Yeah. So you want to watch for what you write in the statement of work. 60 minutes. Okay. And usually, the rule of thumb I look at is 1 slide a minute. Again, that is fluctuating depending on what's
on
used
there.
in there for interaction. But if you define what it is in the statement work, then generally and I've worked with many clients where they say if you have a little bit more than 5-10% change in the scope, then you go back for a scope change.
Exactly.
Like an addendum.
Yep.
But, give a little flexibility. Just even if you go a little bit beyond, so what? Make them happy. But if you start to get up that 10% number, then you have to have that chat.
Yeah. That's where it gets really itchy. I'm glad you said that. That's the number that I came at. When I get above 5%, it starts to impact the work because it starts to impact my attitude. And you have to have that conversation early, not when you've blown it out 15%, because then everybody's upset. No.
Nice.
Hard conversations early. Most important thing.
Yeah. All right. So what's your favorite thing about freelancing?
Everything.
Everything. Showing up as me every day. Whoever me is that day, me in a hoodie or me in a suit, but being able to make that choice.
Nice. And then the opposite of that, challenges.
Same thing.
Everything and your challenges.
Same thing. That means there's no people in my business for me anyway. I know you have a bunch of people in your business, Parker, but being a solo, you miss people. Like I get to make my own decisions. I also get to pay for my own mistakes. And I also don't have I'm trying to build that network of people to talk to about the work, but they're not in the middle of the work with me. So.
Right.
Yeah, no, definitely. I love the flexibility of freelancing. That's probably my favorite thing. I have 4 lovely children, ages 15 through 20. One's in college, 3 here at home in high school. And by the way, that refrigerator of mine is filled with food one day and 3 hours later is empty. Somehow they take the fridge and they just hold it up above the mouth. Unbelievable. But what I love about the flexibility is that I get to do, things with the kids at times. Sometimes, you got to take them to appointments, or you take them to their friend's house or a school event, or whatever. I remember being in corporate for 21 years, and you don't have that flexibility. At least back then, it didn't have that flexibility. No. Now it might be a little bit different because a lot of people are working remotely, but freelancing, you can make your own schedule, and I do a lot of my work at night, weekends too, sometimes.
Nice.
Just during the day, you got to make a trip to the post office or go to the grocery store or whatever.
Exactly. What a pleasure that is, right? In the middle of the day, just nobody's there.
You go there and nobody's there. Yeah. What I get worried is when I get to 3 o'clock in the afternoon, people start filling up the stores. I'm like, no, I'm going to go there before.
I'm not going to go. I'm going to wait till tomorrow. I start at 6 most days, sometimes earlier if I wake up, before I get everyone out of the house and I have quiet time. It's a great time to get work done. You're sharp first thing. I'm sharp first thing in the morning after at least a pot of coffee, but still it works.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. What do you wish you knew before you started as a freelancer?
Oh, so much.
I'll start on this one. Well, I really kind of wish I knew that I was going to head into the ID world, but I started out with different things, facilitating, or I did some special advanced learning. I would say sessions like concept mapping, which is I am not going to getting into that here, but I did some kind of unique things around adult learning. But what I did wish that I knew was that instructional design was a much bigger industry than I thought. I didn't think there was much out there, honestly, back in 2008. And I didn't think I was going to be interested in that kind of thing. But when you feel the pinch financially, you know that you got to do something. And so when I jumped into ID, I just did script writing. I just did storyboard. I didn't get into storyline or, or back then it might have been studio, right? Articulate studio.
Yeah.
I didn't do that. I thought, well, I can make a living doing ID. But as time passed, more and more clients were demanding the ID know storyline and all that stuff. So I had to upskill in that area. But for me personally, it was just more of a trial and error type of thing. But if there's any message I can give out to anybody out here in the audience, is that if you're still working full time and you're thinking about making the leap, just try to maybe think about side gigging for a little bit, see if you like that, before you make that leap. And then, so you don't have to go floundering around after you make the leap, like, oh yeah, I want to do this or that. So that would be something that I would advise.
Great.
I think for me, it's something that literally I came to getting ready for this event, and it was a conversation I had with an ex-colleague who said, I really like your version of success. And I went, holy cow, I have a version of success. And that was funny. Like, I know it sounds, and I mean it cheeky, but at the same time, what I realized was whenever I came in conflict, and this is what I wish I knew before, but I guess I wouldn't have learned what I've learned, is whenever I came into conflict with something and I started getting anxiety around my business, it was because I wasn't looking at my version of success. I was thinking about what other people might think, how they might judge me. And really, like, when I started this, Parker, like, I was like, I'm a recovering corporate person. I went from the smallest job to the biggest job, and that was, biggest job for me. And that was great and all, but that was all about what other people thought, frankly. And it was about the money I needed to make. And that's fine. That was my version of success then. And that's what I wish I understood, was that I needed to reassess my version of success along the way. So when I get worked up because I have to let a client go, for instance, and I start going, oh my God, there's this money. And if I could just, if I could just say, well, what's your version of success? Well, like today, my version of success is my mental health being strong, so that I can do the work that I need to do really well and interact with people, which is a challenge for me. I seem really friendly, and this is over video, but I'm a very flaky individual. So success for me is like, I would like to get in touch with Parker afterward and like connect with him. And those are my success things. And if I stop talking to people or I stop connecting to people because I'm overly focused on something, I have to say, is this your version of success or theirs? That's what I wish I knew. I wish I knew to address that when my anxiety came up and figure out what value I was hitting up against. And as a coach, I should have known that. And I could have helped you find it, but I couldn't find it till I found it. So now I have a little, by the way, this is like, what's your version of success? And I look at it when I start getting more up. Because I think you
that
need
was well said, Lisa. Yeah, that's
yeah.
Great. Yeah. But everybody has their version, right? Everybody's success is different.
And it's not important if anyone else thinks you're successful. So what? But that's a long life learned lesson. I am not young, and I wish I learned that a lot sooner. I do. I hope we all get there sometime now.
Nice. Yeah, mental health is so insanely important. It's so incredibly important. All right.
Where's that on Maslow's hierarchy? Sorry.
Yeah. Right. All right. So what's your checklist for starting a freelance business? Like 5 things you need to do. And I'm going to combine this a little bit with what Mon's question, ideas about marketing, like marketing, even a business license, insurance, like some of the things. We'll do all of the things next week, but some of the things today.
Contract, just sort of listening to what you heard Parker and I say today and thinking about what that means for you. I would say that's important. Everybody talks about LLC versus Corp and S Corp. Here's what I'm going to say about that. I made a decision to be an LLC. That's what I am now. I've heard lots of conflicting advice. I'm always looking into what it means. Literally, someone said, you're doing this wrong. You shouldn't be an LLC to me a couple of weeks ago, not a learning person. And I said, why? Oh, you're overpaying in your taxes. And I went, really? Let me check that out. And so I just listen as I go and know that you can be flexible. I mean, the business part isn't that expensive in terms of a setup. But so before you start making a lot of money, that's when I'd say you want to make sure you're doing it the right way. I'm at that juncture where I'm like, well, let me just make sure now I trust the people I talk to. I also trust the other people and keep weighing it out. And I'm going to stop there and let Parker talk.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that checklist of the top 5 things, I don't really have top 5, but there are a lot of things. I mean, Lisa and I know there's so many things you want to have.
So many.
One of the things that I find very important is not so much a physical or numerical kind of item on the checklist, but more of a mental. And what that is, are you ready to make a personal commitment to make that leap? Yeah. That is so hard for a lot of people. And that anxiety builds up when you're just thinking you're about to leave the company that you hate so much because the boss is horrible. You still have those reservations because, all right, 2 weeks from now, you don't have that check coming in. Now what? So, your job is that lifeline for income. So that personal commitment is really, I would say that's the number one thing, for me anyway, that's just like, yes, I can do this. So when you start thinking, yes, I can versus I'm not sure I can, you think that, then you can go to the next level. And that is what I think the second item is, having a financial plan. And that could be done differently. Maybe you have 6 months of savings and you can live off of that and build up your business over 6 months. Or if you don't have that, then, maybe side gigging while you still have your full-time job. Side gigging, take that money and put it away if you can, so that you can prepare for that leap out of corporate world or out of your school that you're teaching at, wherever it is. So that is important to have a plan. And then another item on this checklist is establishing an identity. Now, when I say that, I mean, don't just call yourself an instructional designer or developer, e-learning developer. There's some uniqueness about you. So what is that? And if you can take and think of a conjunctive reasoning, when I say that, I mean this plus this plus this, and combine them together, that makes you unique. And I'll give you an example. So one of our ID masters, I don't know if she's on here or not, but she is into RVing. So she and her husband travel around the country because her husband is field technician, and he goes to different states. And she works as an ID out of her RV. But she knows a lot about RVs. She knows a lot about campground. And so one of the things that makes her unique is that she can offer her services with the RV office. And, she could probably put like pictures of her journey, different parts of the country on her website. So it kind of makes you unique. You could also, if you want to do as a freelancer, you can sell your own courseware in addition to serving as an ID to client. But if she decided to make some courses around campground management or RVs, that kind of thing, she could pursue that path. But what I'm trying to get to is there is a uniqueness about you. So when you form that identity, you're not just an ID or an e-learning developer. So you have to figure that out. So there's a lot of other things on the list, but I'll stop there.
That's a really good point, though.
Yeah. And what you were saying, like, figuring out your identity, that's what you'll end up marketing. That's what you'll, really put out there so that people know who you are, and so they're like, oh, you know what? You got this. This is what I'm looking for. Okay, let me hire you. When you're self-branding.
And when you're doing that and creating materials, you don't have to create crazy materials. I mean, I want to say when I started, I was trying to create all sorts of really cool stuff, and that's great. It didn't penetrate anywhere, by the way, to my knowledge. But what I've seen, I've seen a bunch of folks doing this now, and there are all these new different pieces of software out there for like LMSs, like 7Taps is one I see coming up a lot, and people are doing projects on those and getting attention for that. And I think that that's a great way to start. I've seen people like build really simple things to really cool, amazing things, and some of the messages out there will feed your brand. You know, create something that you believe in, that you want to create. No one else has to like okay it. And that's a good thing sometimes. Just, you know, you might want to have someone else look at it before you put it in there but you know, you're putting yourself out there and your name's out there, and that's a way to get circulated on LinkedIn, and people see you posted and tagged, and people get jobs that way. Yeah. They really do.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. Wow. So
well, I think usually I like these to run like 30, 35 minutes. So I think I got to wrap it up now. But this has been amazing. I mean, if this is going to be an example of like what next week's conference is going to be like, I can't wait. You guys have had so much incredible information to share. You know, and Lisa, that whole thing about your version of success, I didn't expect to hear something like that. And
I didn't expect to write something like that, Luis. And look at it. When it literally came out of a conversation when I finished my entire presentation for the conference weeks before, when you first asked me, and I went, wow, that's really it. I mean, it is.
Yeah. Because it even resonates. I mean, I'm not a freelance instructional designer or anything like that at all, but even just the concept of it is so it's so poignant.
So universal.
Yeah. And Parker, you're just like offering so generous with a lot of your experience too. It's just absolutely amazing. I can't wait for next week. I am going to selfishly ask my one question before I wrap it up. And I get to do this. Okay. I get to do this. I get to ask one question. What keeps you up at night, Parker and Lisa? Like, what is it? What's, if you're somebody that is, you know, if you were to talk to a fledgling freelancer, what is it that you worry about?
Full transparency. It's funny. I always worry about not having another client. Right. I've not had the problem since my first client. But I'm always like looking forward going, well, you know, I have work for the next 8 months. And what happens if I don't get another client? And I get myself worked up over, frankly, and I'm not going to say it's over nothing. We should always think about these things, but the work is good. The referrals come in, the clients are there. And it's happened for 3.5 years. So I think that it's time to stop staying up at night some nights worrying about that. But that's what keeps me up from a business perspective. We could get into other things, but we're not going to. But,
and I've been doing it for 14 years and ditto still.
Oh, no, I'm never doing better.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so Lisa and I are the same plane on that. So what keeps me up at night is not knowing who your next client will be. You live in a freelance world. You live in a world of uncertainty. You might have a world where you know you have work for X number of months, which is good, but you always have that little nagging voice in the back of your head that says, okay, what's happening after that? And so one of the things I recommend to freelancers is try to get like 3 or 4 contracts going at the same time.
Yes.
Because one thing about being in a full-time job is one day you're there, the next day something happened, you get laid off or whatever, and you're out of there. And so no income. But with freelancing, the good news is that if you have 3 or 4 contracts and one gets canceled, you've still got some money coming in.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but it's still, it's the world you live in. It's like, you don't know what's coming next. But I'm like Lisa, that, you know, you just say, okay, this is the way it is. It's like, move on. Stop thinking about it. Just
and try to enjoy the time when you're down. I mean, that's the hardest thing, Parker, right? When you don't have work, February is traditionally like my slower month. Some years, the first 2 years, it was really slow. This year, it's just kind of nice, a nice change, right? And I've been able to do these things with Luis and get the intersections back up and running and all those things. Use your time when you're slow to do things you love, to do things you're passionate about and enjoy. You won't have a lot of that time all year, but try not to panic when you're a little slower, especially if you know that things are coming up, or you have clients that are all reviewing at the same exact time.
Wow.
That's my life. Yeah.
Great. All right, you guys. Thank you so much. Stephanie, I hope you got some questions answered and this is helpful for you. And I'm sure next week at the big conference, there's just going to be so much more helpful information. So
yes, definitely.
Thank you all for participating in this today, and everybody, thanks in the audience for being here. Sign up for that event next week. I don't know. Let's see. Do I still have it on my clipboard? I do. So make sure that you sign up for next week event and show up. I think we'll have lots of conversations like this. And with that, I'm going to close everything out. Have a great weekend, everyone.
Thank you.
Have
a good one.
Bye.
Bye, Parkers.